What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with I guess you could say it's a Falcons eye view. Maybe you could consider it a player profile, but we're getting entrenched in the draft season. It's becoming like full-fledged, scouting, profiling, that kind of deal. Like, obviously, you can find a lot of that stuff on poundforpound.com, the player profiles that me and Toby have done. We're fresh off of coming back from Mobile and being down there. I had heard some of these names and I had maybe even looked into some of these players, but seeing some of these players like up close and personal and live gives you a different respect for them, right? It gives you a different appreciation for what you're looking at, and it also starts to answer some of the questions. And some of the questions that needed to be answered about some of these players is, can they step up? Can you step up in competition? Can you continue to do the things that you have put on film where you played school at? And can it translate? Whether you're a small school guy or a lesser known talent. There's plenty of guys who made themselves plenty of money over this weekend in Mobile, and you're going to start hearing a lot of names come up and a lot of names pop up, whether it's in regards to the Falcons or just in regards to the draft cycle in general. So I want to talk about one of those guys who my main man Toby D had already brought to my attention before we went to the Senior Bowl, but it was a guy who I wanted to see, was his skill going to translate. And the guy that I'm talking about is wide receiver Christian Watson from North Dakota State University. Now, this is obviously the same college that Trey Lance went to, so I got a feeling that as much interest as we had in Trey Lance last year during the cycle, there's a good possibility that this guy is already on their radar. Because make no mistake, we have to rebuild this wide receiver room. With the stuff that went on, obviously trading Jones at the early part of the offseason last year, and then the things that have transpired with Calvin Ridley. I know some of y'all probably have seen the post that went around on Twitter where they've already removed Ridley's name and nameplate from the facilities. So, they still had Lee Smith's name up there, but Calvin Ridley's was gone. So it's probably a pretty good indicator that we're going to be moving on from Ridley, which is something we'll be talking about as the offseason progresses, especially up until it happens. But with that being said, you can't go into next season with the wide receiver room constructed the way you had it this year. You just can't. You can't go into season with only really receiving threat being Kyle Pitts. You've got to get him some help. And one of the guys that has turned my head in a lot of ways is Christian Watson. Like I said, wide receiver out of North Dakota State. He stands 6'4" and is somewhere between 215 and 220, depending on who's weighing him at the time. But that would give Atlanta what I'm going to dub the Twin Towers, or the two towers, the Lord of the Rings kind of stuff. That would give whoever is QBing, whether it's Ryan going forward or if they decide to do something different there, whoever's there at QB would have two really big targets to stretch the field. Both of them being, obviously being Pitts and Watson, can be used at all three levels of the field. Versatile, both of them, and would make for a really great pairing. So, with a wingspan of, 77-inch wingspan, that's not much shorter than what Kyle Pitts was, I think it was 80 or 81. So you're talking about two targets who could, cover a lot of ground. Christian Watson, one of his best attributes is his speed. He's predicted to have a 4.4 40. So for a guy who's 6'5", over 200 pounds, that's ridiculous. And that speed was put on display up in North Dakota State. He was continuously taking the top off the defense, and it wasn't just the straight line speed. I saw him more than one occasion take a, do the jet sweep and, run it in for a touchdown, or line up as a running back and get the first down. So not only is he have that good top end speed, he also is a versatile receiver, which, like, as it's seen at least through this first year, versatility seems to be at a high demand for Arthur Smith. Now, obviously, we're going off of what he did with Cordell Patterson, but if you make the move to bring back Patterson, you're even with that move, you're still going to have to draft somebody. You're going to have to draft somebody, and you're going to have to sign a free agent at least. Because, like I said, you're not going to go into this, next season with your wide receiver room being, Russell Gage, Olamide Zaccheaus, Christian Blake, and Frank Darby. Like, outside of Frank Darby, those guys' measurables are almost like cut and paste of each other. Now, Zaccheaus has got a little bit more speed, and Russell Gage seems to not mind the contact as much. But, like I said, you can't go into, 2022 with those guys being your primary pass catchers. And now, Christian Watson, like I said, had a real good week of practice down at Senior Bowl, really put his name on a lot of people's radar. And so you might not be able to get him in the third. I've done a handful of mock drafts where I've been able to grab him in the third. I think as we go through the process, that's going to change. This is not a super deep wide receiver class, and the split from the top to the bottom isn't very wide. So it's going to come down to preference of what you like. I think Trayvon Burks from Arkansas is sitting at the top of that list, and I have seen some mocks that have him mocked to the Falcons at 8, and I just don't necessarily see the Falcons going wide receiver at 8, but I could be wrong. So that's why I immediately started digging for what could be considered the second tier of receiver. And Christian Watson's name is at the top of that list as being like the first of the second tier, even finding his way into the first tier. But he's a guy who I think if he's sitting there at the back end of the second or the top of the third round, that's a good spot for him right now. Which, obviously as we get closer to the draft, that could change. But if you were to decide to bring him in, I think he becomes a day one starter. He can play all three wide receiver positions, the X, the Y, the Z. You could put him in the slot. I really think you could even potentially line him up, at least, not primarily, but you could put him in line like a tight end, a small tight end, but nonetheless, you could have fun with, formation variants, and because his versatility is just off the charts. I've seen him run, all the routes. I'm sitting there trying to think if there's one that I didn't see him run. He ran the hitches. He's run the go routes, posts and all that stuff. He's taken, like I said before, he's taken those jet sweeps for big gains and even touchdowns. So I know he spent some time even doing kick returns and things like that for North Dakota State. So very versatile player, and I think a player who could make an immediate impact day one, if nothing else, because we're devoid of talent in that area. So you spend some draft capital like that and bring another tower here in Atlanta, and I think you'd have the start of something special. That's what I got for you today. That's the on the Falcon radar, or the pound for pound radar, however you want to say it. Christian Watson, that's a name that you need to get familiar with. Go watch some tape on him, because he's going to be a guy that, if he ends up in the red and black, I think will be a fan favorite for years to come. As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128, GRIMM1128. We just got finished with the live stream, so not this coming Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. We'll be back again live but always keep your eye on the channel for videos like this, videos that Toby's going to put up, doing what we can to try to keep y'all some interesting content going. And, you know, if you get bored and you need something to read, go check out poundforpoundatl.com. We got player evaluations, we got mock drafts, we got all your off-season needs. We'll be doing like free agency type stuff coming up. But anyway, as always, Falcons fans,